Yeah, okay, welcome back, guys. We are going to be looking at language imperialism now. So this was a class I had with you. Um, so let's get into it now. So we are going to start looking first at the spread of the English language. What are the factors that actually helped English to spread? So we're looking at the major factors, and we are looking first. You have the factor of colonialism. You have the factor of education, and we have the missionary activities. Now, when people are staying in their own place or location or their country, the Britons decided to start looking for trouble and started going to be occupying other people's land and they imposing their language. Of course, we know that nobody asked them to, but through political, let me say, economic intrigue, political intrigue, the British people actually forced themselves on other people across the world. Yes, they did that, and what they did is what is called colonialism. So they decided to occupy other people's land and take over their lands. Of course, maybe people that are suffering that kind of thing now in Nigeria, we understand what we are talking about. If you didn't even understand what happened then, you begin to see signs of fits. People just illegally going to harass other people. Of course, they actually came by subterfuge, like trading. Of course, then from there they went into even slavery, stealing people, human beings, and taking them to somewhere else where they also have occupied other people's set of people's land and using the African people to go and work there and all kind of things. But then by the time they're able to force a country like Nigeria together and form them into, I mean, people that are totally different, force them into becoming one country, then colonialism came out. Of course, they're not interested in learning any language in the indigenous community, so they imposed their language. Now, of course, through education, because they needed people to serve as their office people, and like I mentioned in the class, because they are not really interested in giving education that will make you to become a critical thinker. All they need are clerks and people to write their letters, people to help them carry out, maybe keep books for their trade and all of that, and write letters and do all the kind of things that they, because of course we are aware historically that because many of them are dying because of malaria on the west coast in Africa, and this was not attractive, and that's, I wouldn't say whether we say it's luck, because the way they forcefully took over the Kenyan land, took over South African land, took over the Zimbabwean land, all those areas, they could actually not do like that here because of the fear of mosquito. For them, that's the beginning of wisdom. So through education, they're able to now replicate, replicate themselves, and they created human beings that can carry out their business. They're not interested in getting the people to become people that can be innovative and create things. And the funniest thing is this: the education actually, if you read what Professor Wabweze wrote about the African, I mean, we have had many challenges kind of education that Africans are getting now. You see that the education was just to make people zombies, not to challenge authority, not to critically think. And the funniest thing is that the culture itself is one that expects you to respect others, but also encourages you to be innovative. But then the colonial education was actually to wash your mind away and say everything you have within your culture is bad, only the one that they brought for you is good. So the education was to maintain status quo and make the people enslaved in their mind and not be able to challenge the authority. And unfortunately, I think that's the kind of thing we still have with our government these days, that they just, if you just want to critically ask questions, or they turn into an enemy, or the other party have sent you, and it is not true. Because really, if things are not working, how will government know? I had an experience yesterday when we had the VC visit faculty, and then because people were just they were very uncomfortable, and they say, oh, there was no electricity. And yes, let's visit to see what they are going through. And the person that we introduced them was just saying, the other place they went to, that the person that the even man even said, no, I better pass my, and everybody was angry. That is that the issue. So why are we not having light? That should be the critical issue. Not doing window dressing and the visitor, so all of you are okay. And of course, I mean, one has to ask a question and ask, why are we not having the light? So you should not. How will the man know the truth about why is people feeling about him? How will he feel the pulse of the people if people are just shielding him from hearing the truth? And that's the unfortunate thing that we're having in the government. And that's going to be the way that the mindset of people are being trained not to ask questions. And once you're asking questions, you become somebody that is regarded as unorthodox, as the enemy of the government. Whereas not knowing that when you actually ask questions, they think this person does not that is going to shoot them, that because probably they will be able to use government money to give the person all the comfort, and they will not even know that people are suffering. That's how the people that is how the person shall know. Fortunately for me, I always tell my students I don't know everything, so you are free not to take everything I tell you, hook, line, and sinker. Go and find out. Go and find out. You can challenge it, and if you have superior argument, why not? It is better. Anyway, don't let's leave out at home matter. So in the missionary activities too, actually they came with the Bible, and the Bible is a beautiful book. The Bible, the story of Christ is a beautiful one. But then these people were they having a beautiful mind. So they also political and they use their mind. So during missionary activities, we usually have people that are made to condemn their culture, that are made to condemn everything that is the African, that is indigenous, and they just tell you that everything about your indigenous life is good. I was hearing somebody was saying recently. They say that she if you get married, that so that she will now get married, that the only thing they have done is that they have paid her. I say, eh? So in Africa you have been married. If your brother have been paid, you are a married woman. You are a married man fully, and because even if you go to court and do everything and your family did not collect your dowry, you are not married. That's the truth. You are not married. The man dies, you cannot mourn him. Say you went to court, you went to everywhere, even you went to church, nobody will allow you, the family will not allow, because if you didn't pay your dowry, you are not married. So but we are made to feel that that was so bad. So these are the factors that actually help English to spread through colonialism, through education, and through missionary activities. So let's go on. So the English language in Nigeria. So the factors identified above actually help to implant the English language and culture in Nigeria. Now, through deliberate policy and type of education by the colonial education, so there was no plan to help Nigeria to industrialize in all this. There's nothing, and this is what I was saying. There is nothing in all that was done to ensure that Nigeria will become industrialized. So all these things were meant to just create clerks, people that will just be writing letters. People, of course, you know that if you have an interpreter, it's just to say what you have said. He's not supposed to think and to. Of course, I was giving the example of Ichioku then. His own was hilarious because he actually interferes in what was said. Probably because his own understanding of English was low, but instead of to accept that, he would just turn the thing and change it. No, I mean, if any of you have watched a story of Ichoku, like, but I know you guys, maybe people that are older people that will watch this video will actually understand what I'm talking about. All this was done to produce local labor for the colonial government. That was just the interest. Just local labor to carry out the business of the colonial government, of the what we now call multinationals, that actually were the one doing business and that needed the government, the backing of the government from Britain then. So, and to decorate them with the new religion. So all the colonial government was interested in create labor force that can only be zombies and carry out their orders, and also feel privileged. Of course, they made them to feel privileged, and then to also make them to have the new religions and make them feel they're better than their people, than their peers, and to feel, their peers to feel that they were on top of the world and all of that. So this was all that the colonial government set out to, and this is what it achieves. So let's look at the Englishes. So when we talk about the English is what are we really talking about? So it's a concept that has to do with varieties of English. So you can have them determined specifically based on geographical identities. So in that case, you can have what you call the Nigerian English. Some people dispute it, but the reality is that there's Nigerian English. We have scientific data. Um, we have enough data. Like I was telling you then that you don't have a language that's superior to the other. So there is data now to say that in usage, in terms of usage, we actually have existing Nigerian English. Of course, this is the first thing you take note of, because if you begin to talk like if you're a foreigner, people will just be making fun of you. When Banjo was doing the classification, he talked about the one that yes is it may be close to the RP that receive pronunciation, but it is not acceptable, because there's what is actually grammatical, but is it acceptable? So that is the issue, and that's why I remember there was a young man that was in, I think it's BB Niger once, and everybody was just saying she was faking, and that is what they will tell you if you're trying to talk like a Binto, not like a Nigerian. Of course, the Nigerian accent also be what many people are admiring now and wanted to speak, and that's also what we should be proud of. So people will just be laughing at you and tell you that you're just being fake. But a young woman said that she had an English teacher in secondary school that taught her, and that is how to pronounce anyway properly in quote, and that's how she spoke. She was speaking like that. It's possible. It's possible, and that's also what I say is the quarrel I have when you talk about the people now. I mean, my student told me in the master's class, I don't know whether I mentioned in an earlier video, and they said it that people now pay heavily to go and learn what they call phonics so that the children can speak like foreigners. For God's sake, for God's sake, why are you creating fake Nigerians? Why are you creating fake Nigerians, for God's sake? A child that grew up abroad definitely will speak naturally like somebody that grew up in that place. Because why will you have children here and then you'll be making them to speak as if they grew up somewhere else? I mean, it was so sad, and I was really saddened that we have a government that does not care. Apparently, some of these things will be too late before they realize the damage that was being done. And because these are children that will never know how to live a life that is real, they cannot be authentic because they are being brought up to be inauthentic. So that is that for Nigerian English. People are paying heavily. People are going online to learn how to speak like Nigerians, and then you see Nigerians trying to speak like other people. Anyway, maybe that's the thing about the cultural life or whatever. So you have the British English, you have the American English, you have the Indian English, the Australian English, the Ghanaian English. So all these are based on geographical identities. So people speak because there's the influence of their immediate environment on the kind of thing they speak. So you can see that it's actually possible for them to speak in this manner based on geography. Like I was giving the example, I said once I went to the Indian High Commission to have an interview for visa, and the man was asking me a question. Sincerely, I told him pardon up to 2 or 3 times. The man just the first just give up, just told me I should not worry. And the funny thing is that it was when I was to sleep in the night, and I remember, oh, this is what the guy was trying to say. The Indian accent, yeah, it is awesome. It is awesome. So that's all I will say for now. So of course that tells you that it's accent actually that creates that difference that you have in the Englishes that you're having based on geography. So the influence of the indigenous language on the environment of the person will actually influence how the person speaks, and that may also be why we will talk about the Black English and all of that. There's a name they call it the Black Vernacular. I think that was above was able to. He did a lot of work there, and I think those are the things that it was able to help us to see their features and all of that, did various kind of things. So of course we are still working on Nigerian English, and basically it requires codification for us to get to that place where we can actually define it. But to say that it does not exist, that is not true. So we still continue about the English here. So we also can have some that break that time by such as field of discourse. So we mentioned that so that you can take note of that too, but it's also a variety because indeed when you're talking about the Englishes, you are essentially talking about a variety. There are different varieties of the kind of English that you're talking. So this one now that is defined by the field of discourse, that is the While the first set is talking about location, this one talking about the field, that is the subject matter of the discourse that you are having, that you are considering. So usually why we usually identify professional specialized language under this category. So we can talk about legalese, medicalese, educalese, journalese. Anyway, somebody told me about militaries. Yeah, it's I think my co teacher, the co-lecturer I'm teaching this course with said that because I was a teacher, but it's definitely you have the language of the military, which you cannot take away from me. So when you talk about the way the lawyers write and speak, definitely there's a manner, so it is influence. So when you also talk about attack and all of that, you are talking about military language. So you can talk based on the kind of the core context, the core context or subject matter of a discourse can actually determine all this. So all this represents space fields that have the place of text. So let's talk about the hegemony of English. So what are we really talking about when we talk about the hegemony of English? So the American hegemony helped to spread English language wider. Now, with the rise of the American civilization also came the global dominance of English. And what did it result into? Globalization. So globalization. So and this manifests in different ways. This manifests in different ways, and of course we try to discuss that and talk about the way they manifest. So now you have the British, yes, after the whole colonial thing, then of course they also colonized America. America was able to fight its way out of the grip. Of course, they were settlers. In their case, it was actually different. It was they took over the land from the owners, and then with more and more of them there, they were able to take over the land and dominate the people and dispossess them of their land. And this one were never able to get their land back. And then at a stage, they were tired of being controlled from their home government, and that was how they were able to fight, and they took the land and they separated themselves, and America became another. I mean, you can read up the history of America, but the point I'm making is that the spread of English in the modern day is actually due to the influence of America. So the hegemony of America became the hegemony of English, and English became the language of the first language of um, international interaction, international government. It became the language of science. It became the language that I speak. And the funniest thing is that Mandarin actually has the highest number of speakers, but in terms of geography, Mandarin has a very high population of speakers based on the origin of that country, of the language. But when you look at the population of Great Britain, where English came from, even within that Britain, English is actually for England. You have the Scottish, you have the Welsh, you have the Irish, and they have their own language. They have the way they speak their own. But English, that tiny country, is just about a quarter. Yes, it's a quarter actually, because you actually have Northern Ireland making up United Kingdom, but the three aspects that makes up Britain is England, Wales, and Scotland. And you begin to wonder, this tiny location was able to spread its tentacles wide. Of course, like I said, the modern time, the hegemony of America became the hegemony of English. And that is how you now have, of course, when you also talk about the resistance of English of America to the kind of English that was spoken in Britain, now you now have the American English with spellings where you have the HONO R becoming the honor instead of the Britain's own HONOUR that many of us are familiar with around here. So the hegemony of English is actually based on the hegemony of the American political power. So this basically is it, and globalization happened, and as a result, but like one thing I mentioned, there's actually hardware power, there's also soft power. What about the soft power of Nigeria? Because the influence and the clout that many people are trying to speak like Nigerians now is also soft power, and I think it's something also we should be proud of, because we are able to come from the ashes of domination to be able to also become a threat to other people. But it depends on how you want to look at it. So the hegemony of English actually is based on the hegemonic power of America, which has made English to become so widespread because the influence of America is so widespread. You talk about Hollywood and the spread and its tentacles. I always said this story when I was very young. There was only one television in the whole of my community where I was growing up there in Ibadan. And then there was a day my brother took me, we went to watch. We used to have this film with Moro, all those kind of things. And then suddenly NEPA struck. We used to call it the electricity power company, NEPA then. And he left, he ran home. And of course, I was in the dark there. Someone that I was afraid of that kind, I was crying. Everybody ran home to their mother, but I was stuck there. And it was when he got to my mother, I said, "Where's your sister?" So he had to call my elder brother. He has even retired now from the service. And it was then he remembered that he went with me. He had to start coming in that darkness again to look for me. So that was sort of America. But I don't know how many people watches those things now. But what you have is actually most people looking at basically looking at Nigerian movies and all over, and everybody is interested in watching them and learning about that. And that probably is where the soft power for Nigeria came from. I've told this story of when I got to Johannesburg for the first time. I drive at OR Tabo's airport. I started hearing the twins, the duo, the P Square music. That was what I was hearing, and I was kind of surprised. And like I also said, that when you also look at the issue of the Canadian Prime Minister's election, when you look at it, what was happening? They were celebrating with the music of Nigerian artists to celebrate the man's winning the election. So that tells you that there's a law we also should be proud of as Nigerians. But let's look at it from another angle. Now, during the colonial period, you have, even till I grew up, when I was in primary school or primary secondary school, your name will be written. There's the concept of don't speak in vernacular, emerged from the colonial era as another consequence. Now, children are made to feel that the Nigerian languages were inferior to English. And the truth is this. Scientifically, it has been proven that there's no language that is superior to another one. Yes, a language may be more developed. Your language may be more developed. Yes, English, because of it, has become language of science, language of government, language of many things. It has become quite much more developed than probably many other languages that are not being used for that purpose. The language that are able to find themselves to be used for that purpose may be able to resist, that among from the English dominance and all of that. But the truth is that most language do not have that problem. Most language that are used, that are developed, that are be able to stick to the original, able to resist that dominance of English, or were not made to feel that their language was poor, were able to resist that. So this is also another important thing that we need to know. So children were actually made to feel that their indigenous languages were inferior to English. And because of this, you see many people now speaking English to their children within the country, and people are not proud to speak their own indigenous languages. I mean, it's an advantage if a child can speak all these languages. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop anything. We have seen people that speak 8 languages. I mean, why not? Why not if you can learn them? And like I was saying, there was a thesis examination that I had recently in UI, and they at University of Ibadan, and the young man was able to prove that there was nothing wrong with someone that is bilingual. From the, I mean, she studied research subject are made up of 2 to 4 year old children, and she was able to show from her analysis and her findings that really these people were not less than the children that were able to speak the other languages. So that tells you now that the hegemony of English is what is making people may feel that the languages are inferior. It's not true. There's no sign that any language is inferior to the other one. Then, so this is very important for us to just have a change of mindset and stop thinking like people that don't know what they are doing. There's nothing wrong with their languages. All we need is to develop them. And someone has actually proven it by making children to be taught from primary 1 to 6 and they were very intelligent because they were taught in Nigerian language. They proved to have done very well. They did not do less because of that. So this is very important, that there's no science that say that English language is superior to any language. Yes, it may be more developed if the other language is not being used for many of the things that science require or other things require. It may not be as developed as that, but that it doesn't mean that it is less. So this is very, very important that we take note of as we go along. So scientifically, there's no language that's superior, like I've said. However, you can simply say that some languages are more developed than others, so which are also the point that I've been making. So all languages have complex systems and structures unique to them. There's no doubt about that. Everyone must therefore learn those things to be able to use them properly. Now, if you say, like I always give the example that if something is not being used in a particular language, they may not really be able to, that language may not have the need for that thing. Now, when there was no computer, nobody needed to speak the computer in a language. And I tell people, yes, you have snow because have been proven, I think by Benjamin Lewis now, that the Eskimos, they have about 7 words for snow because they also make their bricks with snow. So they build a house that they call igloo. But nobody builds that kind of house in England, so they may not have word for it. They may not have an English word for it. Like I said, like you also will know, if you don't have some, if you have something to sit on, yes, you have a name for it. But if you don't have, maybe you don't have water where you live, you may not have a name for it. Or at least maybe you talk of a lake or an ocean. If you don't have it, you may not have a name for it. It's as simple as that. Like English have sea, you have sea, you have ocean, you have a lagoon and all of that. But people people that are in the north may not have such names in their language. They will not, because they don't have such experience. They don't have such, just like you say in Yoruba now, you say you have a word for snow. There's no such a word does not exist because there's no snow in the community. So they don't have a word for it. So a language has developed as the content. Like I said, people, I said, okay, somebody will say now that maybe you have amala. There's not like amala in English because you don't people try to say yam flour. Okay, what about they will not say like maybe they will say something like oka. Now people that make food like Igala people now, they have what we call oka, and I think also Igala people, where they mix both cassava and corn together. They have a word for it. But you don't really have, yes, Yoruba have oka, the oka that they have is actually mostly corn. Then you have, like in my place, you have a kulubu, but the kulubu now, the way it is made is quite different from is something like a kulu that Yoruba people make, but it's not really the same. And what do they call bread? Funny enough, they call bread ukulugbo ibo. That is that ukulugbo of white people. That's what they call bread because to them it looks like it. So it's descriptive. Then Yoruba will be saying that computer. They call internet. What do they call it? Ẹ̀rọ ayélujára wọn. That means the world that is connected together. That's what it means. And of course, internet is inter-networking. So I mean, it's descriptive and it makes sense. You really only basically blending to create the word internet. So they also decided to say, okay, they described it. You talk about television, you say amohunmaworan. Telly is, I think that is voice, and then vision is sight. So for them, it is United Amohunmaworan. That's a machine that is taking both voice and pictures. So and they have described it. When you talk about camera in French, you say appareil photo. No, yeah, I think that's the name. And yes, I think that's the name. So you just look at it now that if a language does not have a need for a word, you may not have it. And that is the development we're talking about. So there's no, all that we are saying is that there's no language that is actually superior to the other. So it's scientifically been proven a language, because it's being used for more things, may be more developed than the other. But the systems, everyone has to learn the systems. You have to learn the structural nature of every language for you to be able to use it properly. If you cannot, then that means you don't have the mastery of it. You must study it or be able to learn to speak it, to use it, for you to be able to effectively communicate in it. So now, where does all this lead to? Let's talk about languages, and that's why it's important that we're talking about languages. Is that many of us have this shame to speak about our language. So a major consequence of the dominance of the people, the language is languages. So when the cycle of people is so trampled on that they feel ashamed to speak their own language, then you wonder what hope there is for such a group. So definitely, their language will go, because when they cannot speak it, it will go, and the culture will go with it. So it's whether we are aware that the possible loss of identity that could attend our refusal to speak our Indian languages and not teaching our children to speak it. So if we are not speaking, our children are not speaking it, then of course the language, there's a time that the last speaker of the language will die, and that's the loss. But it's not good for the world. It's not good at all for the world. So it's a danger of our identity and interpretation of the diverse fauna of the world languages, because when that language goes, that means there's an important cell in the world languages that has also gone. So the beauty, the diversity that we have in the world reduces with that. So it may do with the psychology of the language users rather than the oppressing culture. It is not the hegemonic control that is the issue, but it is accepting it, not resisting it. That is where it is a problem. So the decision is rooted in self-determinism that the language speakers alone can speak. So it is when the people decide to say, my culture is good enough, my language is good enough, then they will speak it. So it will not die. So I want you to put in the comment what you think about this. What do you think? How do you use your language? Are you proud to speak your language? Are you happy to speak your language? So this is very important that you take note of, and you take so let's ponder out these questions, and you can give your answers in the comment section. So do you think your indigenous, what do you speak your indigenous language? Now, do you speak it to your children, or will you speak it to them when you have children? If you have children now, do you speak it to them? But if you are yet to be married or whatever, will you speak it to your children? So these are very important for us to know whether our languages will be dead before we know it or not. Now, we discussed the factor responsible for the spread of English globally and particularly in Nigeria. So these are the things that we have discussed. We also discussed the role of America in the hegemony domination of English. We also interrogated the colonial artifact of do not speak in vernacular. What that continue to make many Nigerians feel ashamed to speak their indigenous language or teach their children to do the same? Because the truth is this: when the teachers were flogging people or making you to pay so that you cannot, because you find that it is not English that makes somebody intelligent. I've asked my student the question. I can't remember which class I did, but they were able to prove that yes, that truly it's not English that makes somebody, to show that somebody is intelligent. Yes, I think it is my 4-1 class, and we were able to argue it. I think we have a video to that effect. So it is not that the English that makes you to show that you're intelligent or not. We are able to prove that scientifically. So it is that you are able to express yourself better, yes. But is it possible that if you are actually allowed to speak your indigenous language, you'll be able to actually express what you want to say effectively and convincingly? I know somebody that said that the reason he doesn't like speaking at meeting, because he just see that quickly you can be shut down, you can be shut up. Is that because he was always afraid of making mistake in English? And this is somebody that knows what they want to say. I told him, I said, no. Yes, you can speak what you want to say. Important thing that you be able to be convincing, be able to have your facts right, be able to have your points put together and coordinated, and you can say what you want to say. And when he got liberated from that bondage of that, because he didn't want to make mistake with English, he was able to speak. I say you can be speaking sense, even though your English is like you are what we call shooting gun, but people will listen to you because you are convincing, because you are convinced. Because if you cannot convince yourself, how do you not convince me? If you okay, this is somebody that you say you want to hold a position to lead people, and then once they just browbeat you at a meeting, you keep quiet. People will not vote for you because they will say you cannot represent them, and this is what she does. So eventually we are speaking that do not speak in vernacular is a scam. So education is not what is a scam. Education is supposed to help you to end the secret, but do not speak in vernacular as a scam, because no language is superior to the other one in the world. So we raised the issue of language death as a likely consequence of the mindset that pushes for the rhetoric of Nigerian indigenous languages being inferior to English, which results in many Nigerians not speaking their languages, thereby endangering them. So people have said when a language as supposedly broadly well spoken like Nigeria, like Yoruba, is under threat. How much more the smaller languages, smaller in quotes, because the number of the speakers is not as wide as you say of Yoruba people. So if that kind of language can be under threat, so how much more? So then we need to just roll back from this lie that to say that your language is inferior. It is not. If you can speak your language well, of course you'll be able to master English better. And that is just the truth of the matter. But it will make your mind to be free and to make it to be critical, which is what your oppressors are afraid of. So let's look at this. You can identify 3 factors responsible for the spread of English. You can explain one of them. How you explain the term the Englishes. Give 2 examples to buttress your explanation. Not speaking vernacular was a popular injection in the colonial days because English is superior to all the other languages in the colony. So critically examine this claim and use examples to state your point. If you are parents or will be parents between English and your mother tongue, which will you expose your children to at home? State the reasoning for your choice. So you, of course, if you wish to practice, you can practice, and then any of these things you can decide to provide as your comments in the comments within the within in the comment to this video, and I'll be glad to reply you. I'll be interested to have a read, so you can use this to practice. So thank you very much. So I will see you in the next video.